The bell above the diner door jingled weakly as the cold wind blew in, carrying the smell of rain and road dust. Heads turned for a moment, then quickly looked away. The man who walked in didn't fit the place. Leather jacket covered in grime, gloves torn, boots heavy from miles. He carried his helmet in one hand, moving slow, quiet, like someone who'd seen too much road and not enough kindness. He picked a seat by the window, the kind of corner people use when they don't want to bother anyone. The waitress behind the counter, Carla, noticed him right away. She frowned. "Another biker," she muttered, stacking cups louder than she needed to. "Probably wants free coffee." The man raised a hand gently. "Ma'am, just a cup of black coffee, please." She didn't even look up. "We're busy," she said flatly, though only 2 tables were filled. He nodded once and lowered his hand. Outside, the rain dripped down the window beside him, streaking across the reflection of his helmet resting on the table. He waited quietly, 5 minutes, 10, 15, while Carla laughed with the regulars at the counter. Finally, she stomped over, poured him half a cup, and dropped the bill on the table. $2. He reached for his wallet with slow, steady hands that looked scarred and worn. "Thank you," he said softly. Carla turned without answering, muttering under her breath as she walked away. A couple of customers nearby smirked, whispering just loud enough for him to hear. "Bet he's got no home. Probably another drifter." The biker didn't react. He just stirred his coffee, eyes still on the rain. But there was something in the way he breathed, calm, patient, like he'd lived through worse storms than judgment. No one knew who he was. No one cared to ask. Not yet. The door opened again, and a gust of wind swept through, rattling the hanging signs and carrying in the scent of gasoline and wet asphalt. A young man in a suit rushed inside, shaking off his umbrella. He scanned the room, eyes landing on the biker sitting quietly in the corner. His face lit up with disbelief. "No way," he murmured, stepping closer. "Sir, is that you?" Everyone turned. Carla froze mid-step, coffee pot hovering in the air. The biker looked up slowly, his voice steady but unsure. "Do I know you, son?" The young man grinned, his eyes misting. "You probably don't remember me. Route 14. 3 years ago. That pile-up in the rain. You pulled me out of my car before it exploded." The diner went silent. Forks stopped clinking. Even the jukebox seemed to hold its breath. Carla blinked. "Wait, that wreck? The one that made the news?" The man in the suit nodded, still staring at the biker in awe. "Yeah, he was the one. Nobody even knew his name. He saved 2 people that night, and just disappeared." The biker smiled faintly, almost embarrassed. "Glad you made it, kid." The young man turned toward the waitress. "You got no idea who you've been ignoring." Carla's face flushed red. I didn't know," she stammered. "I just thought." "That's the problem," the young man cut in gently. "You thought, but you didn't see." The biker lifted a hand, his voice calm. "It's all right. I didn't come here for attention." He reached into his jacket, pulling out a folded photo. He laid it on the table, a picture of the crash site, burnt metal and flashing lights, with a headline beneath it. "Unknown biker saves 2 from fiery wreck." Carla stared at it, her throat tightening. "That was you." He nodded, quietly sipping his coffee. "Just did what anyone should have." The young man smiled. "No, sir. You did what no one else had the courage to do." The people who'd been whispering earlier now sat in silence, their faces heavy with guilt. Even Carla couldn't meet his eyes. The diner felt different now, quieter, heavier, like every sound carried the weight of what had just been said. Carla stood frozen behind the counter, the guilt clawing at her chest. The man she'd brushed off, the one she'd judged by his clothes and mud-stained jacket, had once run into flames for strangers. The young man still stood beside the table, his hand on the biker's shoulder. "Sir, when I saw your face that night, I thought I'd never forget it. I prayed I'd get the chance to thank you. My mom's alive because of you." The biker smiled gently, his voice calm. "I'm glad she's all right. That's thanks enough for me." Carla slowly walked over, holding a fresh pot of coffee. "You didn't tell anyone," she said softly. "You just left." He nodded. "Wasn't my story to tell. Some things you do because they're right, not because they get you seen." Tears welled in her eyes. "I'm sorry," she whispered, "for how I treated you. I shouldn't have." He cut her off with a kind smile. "Don't be sorry. The world teaches people to see what's on the outside. But the road teaches you different. What's worth something never shines." Carla bit her lip, fighting the ache in her throat. Can I at least get you something real to eat? No charge. He chuckled. Coffee's enough. But she shook her head. Please, let me do something. She rushed to the kitchen, wiping her tears with her sleeve, shouting for a fresh plate of food and the best pie in the house. The other customers, who'd been silent all this time, started murmuring apologies of their own. One offered to pay his meal, another to shake his hand. The biker just smiled through it all, humble and quiet, like someone who'd carried the weight of the world and still found peace in it. Then, slowly, he reached for his helmet. He turned it in his hands for a moment. The surface scratched, faded, marked by time and battle. And then he placed it on the table. Carla looked at it closely, her eyes widening as she noticed the faint engraving on the side. USAF, Rescue Unit 24. She gasped. You were Air Force. He nodded slightly. Search and rescue. Retired now. The road's my peace. The diner fell into stunned silence again. Even the young man seemed speechless. Carla placed the plate of warm pie in front of him, her hands trembling as she tried to hold back the tears. All those years, she whispered. And you never told anyone who you were. The biker looked down at the steaming slice, the smell of cinnamon and butter filling the space between them. Didn't see the point, he said softly. The people I saved, they're the story, not me. The young man sat back down, shaking his head. Sir, with all due respect, you're the kind of man people should know about. The biker smiled faintly. I'm just a man who did what he hoped someone else would have done for him. He picked up his fork, took a bite of pie, and exhaled, slow, content, like he hadn't had a real meal in days. The entire diner watched him, quiet, reflective. For the first time, no one saw a biker. They saw a man who'd lived through fire, walked through pain, and still found kindness on the other side. When he stood to leave, Carla hurried from behind the counter. Wait, she said, her voice breaking. You don't have to pay for this. It's the least I can do. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a few crumpled bills anyway. Keep it, he said gently. Use it for someone who needs it more. Her lips trembled. You already did that today. He gave her a small, knowing smile and reached for his helmet. As he slipped it back on, the reflection of the diner lights danced across the faded words, Rescue 24. Before he stepped out the door, he turned one last time. Next time someone walks in looking rough, he said, remember, the outside don't tell you what they've been through. Then he pushed open the door. The bell jingled softly as he disappeared into the misting rain, his motorcycle rumbling to life, fading into the distance. Carla stood at the window long after he was gone, her hand pressed to the glass. The young man came up beside her and said quietly, He's the reason I'm still breathing. The least we can do is be better because of him. She nodded, wiping her eyes. From now on, she whispered, everyone gets a full cup. If this story touched your heart, share it. Because kindness doesn't always wear a smile, and heroes don't always wear uniforms. Sometimes, they walk in covered in dust, carrying stories that could change your heart forever.